Contest is Toby Gibson. Introducing first, fighting out of the red corner, wearing the white trunks with red trim and weighing in at 172 pounds. From Louisville, Kentucky, his professional record an outstanding one, 24 victories with only 1 defeat, 13 KOs. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn, the Promise Thomas. And across the ring, fighting out of the blue corner, his opponent, wearing the white trunks with black letters, weighing 173 pounds. He's from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and brings a professional record of 36-0, 2 draws, 25 KOs. He's a 2-time world champion and current IBF Super Middleweight Champion of the World. Title not on the line tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, James Lights Out Toney.
Okay, gentlemen, I've given your instructions to you before this fight in your respective dressing rooms. I want to warn you right now, keep it clean inside. Obey my commands at all times. Good luck to both of you.
Well, excellent steerage from Glenn Thomas. And if that one fights, boy, there'd be a lot of guys like Glenn Thomas who'd be undefeated. James Toney, on the other hand, not a guy who is going to back down from either a stare down or an opponent like Glenn Thomas. Thomas, though, very confident.
Well, Glenn Thomas is like Ricky Thomas, who fought Toney the last time, though I don't know if he has a skill level of Ricky Thomas. Glenn Thomas is a tough guy. Went the 8 rounds with Roy Jones before Jones got him out of there. And that was at a weight that was lower for him, 160. Had to get all the way down. He's much more comfortable at this weight, as is James Toney.
And Thomas says he wants to counterpunch, but that would assume that Toney will be the aggressor.
We saw James Toney against Ricky Thomas's last bout. It's just a superb effort by him. I think that James Toney at 168, really, or 175, seeing at 173, that's really like a light heavyweight. I think in the super middleweight or light heavyweight divisions, James Toney will really show what he could do.
Yes, so do I. And in fact, we've talked about this now on numerous occasions, but this is a guy who I really think has improved since he's been champion. And I think right now, I mean, he is in the elite. Pretty good left hand there.
Yeah, he really did. He won the championship at such a young age, just over 20. And no one really expected him to win it at that time against Michael Nunn. Just making a good showing would have been considered good. And he had struggled to make the 160-pound limit, which I think is in large measure responsible for some of those lethargic performances. Normally when a fighter says that, you don't believe him, but he's looked so good at the higher weights that I do buy that. You know, it's funny, we're in the time of the NBA playoffs, and they talk so much about how the defense is what makes the difference. In James Toney's case, his defense maybe is what makes him a champion even better than his offense.
He gives you a lot of angles. He's very difficult to hit.
I mean, Iran Barkley tried as hard as he could in their match. There's an example. It's just tough to hit him. Ricky Thomas in the bout we had threw some terrific combinations against James Toney, and Barry, he just couldn't get him in.
And he gives you these kind of angles that if you throw a straight punch, you hit him in the ribs.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Or a glove or an arm.
Toney really stalking Thomas.
You know, the conventional thinking of a Roy Jones-James Toney match, and a part of a lot of people, was that Roy Jones might be the favorite. I think if that match were held tomorrow, it would either be Pick'em or Toney be the favorite.
Yeah, I think so, too. Toney does not have a lot of kind things to say about Roy Jones.
No. And part of that is born of the fact that he feels like Jones has gotten more attention than him, and Toney feels like he's accomplished more in boxing, which basically he has.
Right hand of the ribs, right hand of the head by Toney. Even though he didn't do very much, I believe he did more than enough to win this round. Stanley Cup, boy, it's been a great one.
It really has been. So let me explain that curved stick controversy. Yeah. Well, maybe we better let Bill Clements do that, huh?
in the first round, Toney a little bit more effective. Thomas threw more punches than I thought he did.
That's interesting. I'm surprised Thomas landed that many punches, but obviously he got there with more than I thought. Can I demand a recount from Punch Profile on that one? Well, maybe I can demand it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get it. Well, I'm going to get it all right, not the recount. That one was just a smidge low by Thomas, and that, of course, it's not that there's any ill will already between these fighters, so, you know, there's no problem with that.
I guess that's just the way Toney gets himself motivated.
You know, I was going to comment on that, Barry. Remember, you spent a lot of time around Marvin Hagler, as did I. And I'm not making the analogy of their personalities, but Marvin Hagler used the fact that he didn't feel like he was appreciated enough in the boxing world as motivation. Toney does the same thing.
Yeah, he does. It was an interesting little byplay there, too. Toby Gibson stepped in and said to Thomas, keep him up, and Toney said, no, it wasn't low. And I was going to say, I didn't think it was low. It seemed like a pretty good punch.
You know, I've always thought that somewhere lurking inside James Toney, there's an amiable fellow waiting to come out. And we saw evidence of it when we were last at his fights in Fernwood. But then after I touted that afterwards in the ring, he kind of went back to the old James Toney.
Well, again, it takes you back to the Marvin Hagler. Well, Marvin Hagler is one of the best guys I've ever met in boxing.
Wonderful guy.
Terrific guy.
And yet the impression of him by people was this surly kind of a guy who felt unappreciated. And he was unappreciated to a great extent. And to some degree, so is Toney. You know, I don't want to denigrate Roy Jones either. He's a great fighter. So the comments you made before, I don't want it to be interpreted that Roy Jones has somehow slipped or that he's not a great fighter, because he is.
It would make a great fight.
Oh, superb.
Thomas a moment ago got there with a pretty good right hand, actually.
Glenn Thomas is just having a hard time landing, and that's really the bottom line here. There, he got a good left hook hit.
Well, that was the counter that he was talking about.
Interesting, Toney's not using his jab too much. He's kind of walking in, looking to get some power shots off.
Thomas really is following his game plan pretty well. It's
That's
just that
true.
Toney's not cooperating completely.
See, one of the things that Toney is not doing is throwing his combinations as well as he would have might. The thing about James Toney in those middleweight fights, when he wasn't effective, he didn't throw his combinations.
We're in the corner of James Toney. Bill Miller will be the voice you hear.
Draw the lead, and he comes with it. Pound him. All right? How you feel, baby? All right. Keep that pressure out front. All right. Right now. Hold the key. Yep. Which one's that? What's the ass up with
Well, a reminder, we will next be with you on Sunday, this time at 5 o'clock as we keep moving around. You just got to find us. Prince Charles Williams and Art Bayless, light heavyweights, will be at the Fernwood Resort in Bushkill, Pennsylvania.
It's a pretty good fight, too, Charles Williams and Art Bayless. Williams lost his title trying to get back on track. They really want Toney to get his combinations flowing. That's what Bill Miller was really kind of alluding to, and stay out front and keep the pressure on.
Through the first two rounds, you can see Thomas throwing a few more punches. Actually, pretty close numbers.
Yeah, not that big an edge for James Toney. Thomas wants to get the hook in, and there you see him throwing good double left hook.
On your card, the first two rounds to Toney.
Yeah, by narrow margins, but I did end up giving him the round. When James Toney is less effective, it's when he just doesn't throw his combinations, which he's quite capable of doing. We saw him do it against Thomas. In this bout, he's been a little reluctant to do that, looking to load up.
Double right hand, although it wasn't particularly effective from Thomas, did land.
You know what else James Toney isn't doing here, Barry? When he turns himself to his opponent all the way to the left, he's openly squaring himself up more to Glenn Thomas, and so he's being hit a little bit more. It's almost like showing a lack of respect for Thomas. This is a different style. I mean, he's gotten himself away a little bit, James Toney, from what he does best. He's not doing well in this bout, but giving Glenn Thomas more opportunities.
Good left hand from Thomas. You heard Bill Miller, though, say, put the pressure on, keep the pressure on him. So that obviously is the game plan, and Toney certainly is doing that in this round.
You don't punch back when you take this one.
There's the good head movement from Toney. Nice right by
Yeah, straight right hand.
James Toney being a little lethargic, and we've seen this before, allowing certain things to happen in the ring. Good defense by Thomas. But look what a clever fighter James Toney is. Can't hit him to the head, so immediately switches to the body. But give Glenn Thomas credit for some good defensive work on those ropes.
Yeah, Thomas doing a nice job, but he's likely just in there against a guy who's more experienced, more effective.
It's been an interesting round, though, in which Glenn Thomas has made some things work for him.
End of round number 3. And James Toney probably did enough once again. Unique.
Twin blade from...
Here is James Toney getting a sneak right hand on Glenn Thomas in a round that otherwise, though, I thought Glenn Thomas had some very, very good moments.
And Toney starts out rather quickly here.
You know, the defense of Glenn Thomas has been quite good. And usually with Toney's hand speed, we saw it against Ricky Thomas, it's hard to avoid those shots.
Let's take a look at the jabs through the first 3 rounds. Thomas throwing more jabs, but not landing any more than James Toney.
No, and Toney, it shows you that Toney has not used that punch that effectively. I mean, in terms of numbers anyway, even though his percentage is good. Since Toney moved up in weight, interestingly, his hand speed has actually been better. And the reason for that is he hasn't had to weaken himself to get down to 160. Now, do you see Toney as there you see the I gave Thomas the last round. So I have Toney ahead 29-28. Do you see Toney as a light heavyweight?
I can see it, definitely.
Yeah, I think so too. He might not punch with super power in the light heavyweight division, but probably has what it takes to be a very good light heavyweight.
And there aren't a lot of huge power punchers in the light heavyweight division.
That's a very good point. He thinks he could be a cruiserweight eventually.
See what happens?
That one I would question more, but it's possible.
Well, in fact, the IBF cruiserweight champion Al Cole is one of many luminaries in the audience. Speaking of luminaries, I want to mention to the folks in Colorado Springs, I'm going to be down there on June 19th for the Pikes Peak Rodeo with many luminaries. Just to point that out.
You're riding up?
Yeah, we're riding up, that's right. Up there, down there, wherever. It's going to be a fun event for charity. How many more times do you think it's mandatory for me to mention that prior to the event?
Yeah, right.
That'll probably do it. James Toney is now starting to go to the body, Barry, and it's making all the difference in the world.
Where's the right over the top?
Thomas tries to fight off the ropes. Toney just won't let him off of there. And now Thomas says, come on.
And if you say come on to James Toney, I guarantee he'll do the opposite, which is tell you come into me and then I'll counterpunch you. And it goes toward what you said. There's a very good point. Seldom does James Toney get too emotional in the ring. You know, he's a fiery guy outside. He's almost always composed in the ring. Some have criticized him for being too lethargic in some of his efforts.
Well, that's true, and I've been one of them, but...
Oh, you were the guy, I remember.
Yeah. Just ask James Toney.
Yeah, he'll tell you. Maybe that's why he's a little surly sometimes. It's not me, it's you.
Guilt by association. Thomas tries to open up on Toney. I don't believe Toney's hurt. And none of those are landing at all. So it's a lot of bombast, but not a lot of bombs. We'll be back.
Sit through my call again. I'll torture him to death. Torture him. Just destroy him. Okay. I can't believe I missed this. Hold him.
Numbers in the fourth round. Thomas throwing more and landing the same, and that was the story with the jabs that you saw a little bit earlier. But Thomas is trying to fight him, to his credit.
He really is, and you know, defensively, Thomas is doing a very nice job against James Toney. That's maybe the one thing that's surprising Toney. And you know, when you get yourself out of the game plan that you normally have, which I thought James Toney did a little bit, sometimes it's hard to get back.
Up the middle with something. Get Jinx on. 3-point Jinx on. Right there.
Lights out. Keep that right hand open. Come on.
That's right.
Guys got no respect.
Step around. Bring it back home.
There's the jab of James Toney, and you know, that's a weapon that's been underused by him. And we have to give Glenn Thomas some credit for that. It's been hard to land it for Toney.
Got the left hand. In, baby.
Toney has that look of a man who can get his opponent out of there anytime he chooses.
And once in a while, that will get you off your game. And you'll do things you don't really want to do. I don't think he thought Glenn Thomas would be this slick in the ring.
Thomas's hand started to drop a little bit.
Come on, keep him there. Come on.
Right there. Right up the middle.
Come on, rip in there. Nothing soft.
The left hand by Thomas.
Not a lot of leverage on the left hooks from James Toney there. He's landing, but he's not throwing it with the leverage he normally has.
Look at him 3 steps back.
There's the jab of Toney, which when he throws it, it's a superb punch.
Great body shot with the right hand by Toney, too. I have an idea that Thomas may be getting just a little bit tired.
And part of it is because Toney has switched his attack to the body in the last round or two.
There you go. You got where you want it.
This is the 5th round of a scheduled 10-rounder.
Watch him head.
End of round number 5. That was an easier round for James Toney.
I ain't quitting. That's right, baby. That's right. Behind the neck. There you go.
Interesting comment, I think.
Yeah, he's a little tired, but I think he said that to pump himself up, Glenn Thomas.
Going good, G. Let's don't get lazy, all right? Okay.
Well, a reminder, baseball coming your way from Omaha, Nebraska. One of the really good events in sports, the College World Series in the losers bracket, Kansas and Long Beach State. Remember, it's a double elimination tournament at this point, so the loser goes home and the winner stays in the tournament. Long Beach State 0-1, Kansas 0-1. They'll have at each other coming up next right here on ESPN. The College World Series from Omaha, Nebraska.
Let's go. Keep that jab. Start counting that jab now.
In George Thomas's corner, or rather Glenn Thomas's corner, telling him just keep with the game plan, stay with it, put the pressure on him. Thomas trying to psych himself up. Still a long way to go here.
You could sense, though, that Glenn Thomas getting a little tired, I think, a little fatigued. And right now, it would behoove James Toney to go to the body a little bit more, which he was doing early.
Right behind the right elbow.
Toney using the jab very effectively now.
Numbers in the 5th round. Thomas throwing fewer, landing fewer, and that's a sign of fatigue.
Toney landing upwards of 50%. Shows you that he is being pretty serious now about going after Glenn Thomas.
They're on his way up.
Well, we said earlier, we made the analogy of James Toney to John McEnroe. McEnroe just hated to practice, and I'm not trying to say that James Toney doesn't like sparring in the gym, but he just would rather be in there in a live fight. McEnroe said he always played doubles just because he didn't like to practice. Now it's like his practice.
Wants to stay very busy, this James Toney. I have him winning the fight by 1 point. Could be more.
No cheap shots. Let's go.
Toby Gibson says no cheap shots to Toney. Toney kind of turned with the shoulder. You still have it as a close fight, though, interestingly enough.
Yeah, you know, because a couple of those rounds I thought Thomas stole by a very small margin. But I would not be surprised if it was a bigger margin on the judges' scorecards, and that would not be inappropriate.
Come on. Hold him, Glenn. Let's go. Let him go.
When you're better, when you feel like you've got better skills and you're kind of in control, there is a tendency in any athletic endeavor to relax a little bit too much, and that's what Toney does sometimes.
Good right hand by Toney, I think, hurt Thomas for the first time. Thomas trying to fight back, missed with 3 shots, and takes another right.
Good counter rights by Toney. He has thrown that punch well, and now they're going to talk a little bit. That was inevitable.
That was a good left hand from Thomas. I don't believe Toney is hurt. He'll give you that look sometimes.
Another good round for Toney, but Glenn Thomas has landed more punches in this bout than we've seen in recent fights against Toney. I said that, he kind of looked down here.
Yeah, he did,
You
yeah.
think you heard that? Nice right by Thomas.
He can't handle that weight. Keep it downstairs.
Give him something to remember. Come on, no cheap shots.
If he's going to hear those comments, maybe I'll give him some advice. I think his corner does a good enough job with that.
Toby Gibson again telling Toney no cheap shots because he spun Thomas into his left hand.
Come on, give him something to remember. Give him something to remember.
Coming to the end of the 6th round. This was really an entertaining round and not an easy round to score either. I can't wait.
James Toney with some very effective counter right hands. And that one getting to the head of Glenn Thomas. He's beat Ricky Thomas and Danny Thomas. Now he's going to maybe beat Glenn Thomas.
Going for a Thomas hat trick.
Marlowe could be next.
Yeah.
Toney expanding his lead a little bit. And also the numbers of punches thrown has really gotten a lot closer. It was Thomas had the big edge earlier.
But Thomas, to his credit, is really fighting James Toney.
Yes. He's not looking to just survive. But, boy, he is getting ripped to both the body and the head now by Thomas.
He is. On your card now, as you mentioned, Toney with a 2-round edge.
And as I said, it could be more on other judges' scorecards, and that would not be inappropriate. And the momentum of the bout certainly has gone toward James Toney now.
Well, it's coming down now, I think, to a conditioning fight. And Toney, I've never known him to show up not ready to fight.
And the only thing that ever made him fatigued was getting to the 160 level, which was really pretty much very low for him. And when you think about it, here he's fighting at 172. He looks comfortable at that weight. So it's 12 pounds less to get to 160. That's a lot of weight. So I did that math immediately. From 172 to 160 would be 12.
Almost every time. Good right hand from Toney.
Down and up.
Put your hands up. Put that head.
You know, it's interesting. James Toney is a good inside fighter. He's not known for that, but he's become much better at that skill. Showed it against Barkley. He's showing it here.
He's got the whole package. I don't think he's a good defensive fighter. He can fight you at long range. He can jab you. He can get inside and brawl with you.
If there's one criticism of James Toney, it is that he's not a big power puncher. It takes a lot of punches for him to get you out or a win by decision, but then what's the difference? Winning is the point.
Don't hang your chin out. Don't hang your chin out.
Hold him. Get off him.
Break him down.
Thomas continues to fight him. But I think Thomas really is tired.
Toney's done a very good job of getting him against the ropes, leaning on him, working the body, and tiring Glenn Thomas.
Nice right hand there, and that hurt Thomas. And another right hand, and Thomas is going to end this round holding on.
Red.
James Toney, this is where he hurt Thomas at the end of the round. Excellent right hand, and that's probably Toney's best power punch is the right hand, even though he's got a good left hook also. And
then when the round was over, Thomas just yelled across the ring at Toney, "I'm still here."
Well, he is hanging in there, but he's starting to lose these rounds and making the likelihood of him winning a decision pretty remote.
In the 7th round, Toney really stepping it up here.
Toney, who has not had a title defense since last August, and he was telling us today, he said it seems like a long time for that, is going to defend his IBF super middleweight title against Darren Van Horn, who's the #1 contender, former champion, July 24th.
Tony's saying something to Toby Gibson, referee. I'm not quite sure what it is.
Please, watch that head. It's good.
He's talking to him. He said, "You're scared." He's turning his head. There's a low blow, and there's your card. 3 points now to Toney.
Right there. Put that right hand on the body. Right underneath that elbow. Right there. See, get it in. Get his body. Good shot.
James Toney throws as good a left hook to the body as anybody in boxing when he gets leverage on that punch.
There's a right to the body and a right to the head.
And he's one of the few, oh man, that left to the body almost caved in Glenn Thomas. And, you know, he's one of the few fighters, James Toney, that throws that right to the body and right to the head. Another guy we see do it is Buck Smith, and the guy who made it famous was Mike Tyson.
He's tired. He's tired, James. He's holding on. He's tired. Keep nothing right now. That's wrong. Keep nothing. Don't get nothing. You won't throw nothing. Chin down. Chin down. There you go.
And Toney really finding a home for both hands, actually, and both upstairs and downstairs.
He is punishing Thomas in this round with great combinations, and that's the key when Toney is on, is when he's throwing those combos.
Let me see that Toney hook to the body.
See Thomas dipping down. He does not want to get hit with that hook to the body. That punch is hurting. Should mention that Glenn Thomas fighting after a 9-month layoff the bout against Jones, and that may be having some impact on him.
And he hits Toney with a 3-punch combination, and Toney fights right back.
Good hooks by Glenn Thomas.
Yeah, he had about 4 of them in there, but he took a couple in exchange.
Well,
and now we got a little extracurricular activity.
Well, the corner guy of Glenn Thomas got in Toney's face, and if you do that, he'll respond.
You came in. Now you stay in that corner.
Toby Gibson taking charge here.
Toby Gibson's right.
I'll bring my man back to the corner.
I'm bringing my man back to the corner. He threw a punch at me. Bring my man back to the corner, man. I ain't got no time to argue with you. No, he came over here and threw a punch. I come and get my man.
You come out in the center, pal. You stay in your corner.
Water, baby.
Keep your thing. Keep your thing. Over the head. Over the head. Fuck this clown. Real deep breath. Real deep breath. Fuck this clown. He's got no respect.
It's Cable.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened at the end of the round. We'll take a look at it. You be the judge. Was that warranted? Obviously, the corner man seemed like he was confronting James Toney a little bit, but, well, it heats up a little bit, and Glenn Thomas carrying that energy over into this round.
Come on, one left hook to the body. That's all for that.
Punch profile guys count that punch?
That's a good question. James Toney obviously with a huge edge at this point. And the good thing for him, landing 51%, that's impressive.
Watch that, the thrill is gone.
Now, the early energy from Glenn Thomas, which kind of fed off that incident, seems to be gone right now.
pretty good uppercut from Thomas. Toney's not easy to hit with an uppercut.
No, it's very difficult. And Thomas has had a pretty good beginning to this round.
Toney's very deceptive, though. He'll give you that look like he's hurt. He'll kind of almost go limp a little bit. And I don't believe he's been hurt in this fight.
He wanted to get Glenn Thomas out earlier than Roy Jones. That is obviously not going to happen if he gets him out at all.
Watch it out and watch them heads.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Glenn Thomas is fighting at a more comfortable weight for him. I think this weight thing, you know, people could say you're making too much out of it. At this level, at this weight, Barry, I think it makes a big difference when you're in the 160, 168, 170-pound range.
Yeah, I agree with you, absolutely. Particularly so at even the lighter weights. This one starts to be marginal.
That's true, right. Lighter is even more important. Big right by you.
Yeah, very big.
And he would land it again if he used the jab in front of him.
Thomas is really there to be hit. That was really much ado about nothing.
And the only good punches were the rights by Toney, and he may have stunned Thomas with it.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think Thomas is hurt. I still think he's hurt. There's another right hand. Thomas is just about gone. He holds on. Long way to go in this round.
Fortuitous that the mouthpiece went out. Boy, is it. They're taking their time getting it back in.
Okay.
Thomas still doesn't have much legs left.
Hurt him, and you know, even when Toney makes the pretense of a jab, that right hand gets in there.
Yep. Should be about 15 seconds left in this round. That's it. Now we're going to go into Thomas's corner. And he is a hurting cowboy.
Come on, G. Suck it up. Wet this, man. Wet this. Last round. Wet it up.
Keep the pressure on. Finish up strong.
Respect for this, bro. Okay? Come on, how you feel now?
Give me 3 minutes. Be smart when you're going in that. This is still the key, the jab. Down that pike with that right hand and shorten that hook up when you're coming back.
He's tired, son. He's tired.
Oh, good advice from Bill Miller. They want the jab and the right hand right up the pike, as he said. And that has landed quite a bit. Right hand's bouncing off the head of Glenn Thomas, and that's been James Toney's big weapon here. That and the left hook to the body.
And they have the phantom touching of the gloves to start the 10th and final round.
Watch them heads. Watch them heads.
I think Thomas would consider it a moral victory if he got through this round.
At this juncture, yes. He was saying it in his corner.
Yeah. Not much left in the punches of Thomas.
You know, as I'm watching this bout, you know the bout I'd like to see? I'd like to see Ricky and Glenn Thomas fight. Seriously.
Yeah.
Their styles are, it's a great matchup. Ricky and Glenn Thomas would go at each other for 10 rounds. I got Ron Katz, the matchmaker, sitting right here next to me.
He's agreeing.
Let's go. Box it out there. Box it out there. Punch it out there.
So we'd have to be saying Ricky and Glenn the whole night.
That's right.
James Toney is finishing strong. The last round, an excellent effort, and here he's been able to pot check Glenn Thomas.
Body work. still great.
See, and when he throws those kind of combinations with the body work that was part of it, James Toney is just an excellent fighter.
Well, his performance against Rand Barkley was a thing of beauty.
Spectacular. Against a very motivated, in shape, and ready to go Rand Barkley.
Good left hand, drove Thomas off of him.
James Toney now in the super middleweight division, soon to become a light heavyweight. Wants to defend against Van Horn and maybe once or twice more than his definite designs on the light heavyweight division.
I think he'd really like a Roy Jones matchup.
Yeah, if that's feasible, but Jones is talking about unifying middleweight titles and things of that nature. Michael Nunn, also an interesting guy potentially in Tony's future. Rematch with him.
I think that's the case, however, one guy going one way and another guy going the other.
Yeah, although Nunn was more impressive in his last performance.
Yes, he was.
But by and large, you're right. You're seldom wrong. Maybe shades of gray in there.
I remember once.
Yeah, 83.
It was a rainy Tuesday, I think.
Get over here. Time.
Little glove repair here.
Let's go. Over there.
What, Toby? Whoa.
Toby's in charge.
In charge here. Surprised he wasn't saying sit, stay, and roll over.
Well, you know, this is the kind of fight, though, where you better be very, very assertive or people are going to start taking advantage of it.
Yeah, he's done a good job with this.
Yeah, he really has.
Well, it ends with a flurry.
Well, Glenn Thomas is woofing and he's excited, but he lost. I guess he feels good about the fact that he went the distance. I don't think he feels like he won.
I'm not sure. I think he does feel like he won.
I guess he was heartened by the fact that he had a decent exchange at the end there, but I just don't see any conceivable way. Although we were pretty shocked at the scoring in our earlier bout.
I'd be inclined to think that this one would go the other way, though.
I would think so, yeah. But the Larry Donald match, actually one judge even had it a draw and only 2-point edge for Donald. But as you look at James Toney, a very good performance. Not quite as sharp as the Ricky Thomas performance, but close in that he did pretty much everything he had to do. Ended up with a big edge in terms of punches landed and punches thrown probably too.
A reminder that next, the College World Series, Kansas and Long Beach State in an elimination game. Winner goes on, loser goes home. And they're both pretty good teams.
Long Beach losing to Wichita State, huh? Which is a very good ball.
Very good team, yeah. All right, we're set to go then with the decision. And for that, here's Michael Buck.
Ladies and gentlemen, we go to the scorecards. Chuck Jampa scores the bout 98-92. Dave Moretti scores at 97-93. And Cindy Barton scores at 98-92 for the winner by unanimous decision. Still undefeated, James Lights Out Toney.
Well, and the opponent, Thomas, collapses on the canvas, and I just think it's out of disappointment. He really thought he won it. He didn't. Tony's the winner. Well, James Toney is the winner, and he's the winner by a goodly margin over a tough guy by the name of Glenn Thomas, but on this day, not tough enough. Let's go up to Al Bernstein in the center of the ring with a winner.
James, you had a good performance. You wanted to get him out a little earlier, or get him out, period. His defense was maybe a little better than you thought?
Yeah, you know, his defense is like, you know, his defense was like, he's like in a preventive mode. He didn't want to get hit. He was trying to hit and run at the same time. But, you know, I did what I did. I kept the pressure on him. He ran like a little scolded chicken. I don't know why he thought he wanted to fight, but, you know, I think he's just happy because he went the distance with me.
Well, I think it's a moral victory. Darren Van Horn is next. What do you see in that bout?
Well, I'll be in a lot better condition now than I was for this fight because, you know, it is a title defense at 168, and I will be ready. And Darren Van Horn, hope he took a look at this fight and hope he think he got some heart he can come and beat me because I will be ready for him on July 24th.
Quickly, Jackie Callan, your manager, is the light heavyweights in his future in the near future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As soon as he's ready.
You'd like to see him step up in weight?
Want to move up?
I'm definitely going to move up pretty soon.
Okay, well, there's the answer. They're in a court.
Kevin, a little bit hard. I love you.
All right, congratulations on your win. James Toney gets himself a very nice win over Glenn Thomas, and it's a win that he says maybe wasn't fashioned while he was in the best of shape, but he's still in good shape. Let's go back to Barry downstairs.
All right, thanks very much, Alan, and thanks to James Toney. Toney gets another tough guy by the name of Thomas. He's got to stop fighting Thomases. That's all there is to it. But a good enough fight to win it, and to win it rather handily. For us here in Las Vegas, that's a wrap. For my partner, Al Bernstein, we'll see you in a couple of weeks at the Fernwood Resort.